All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and this is, I would say, a July movie roundup, but I guess it technically still is, but it's only really 3 movies I'm going to be talking about here. So I guess you can consider this the July movie roundup, or a triple feature. A July triple feature. There you go. That's what I'll call it. A July triple feature. I will be talking about Kill, which is India's newest action film. I'll also be talking about MaXXine, and I will be talking about Twisters. So let's just get right to the episode. Talk about, like I mentioned with Kill, it is India's newest action movie. The basic premise of the movie is a soldier on a train, and the love of his life is on there, and then bandits take over the train, and he has to go through all of them. It is a violent, bloody action movie that should make fans of martial arts / action movies happy. That said, Kill also treats itself like a romantic movie. That's kind of a little bit, and kind of like the first quarter of the movie it's kind of like that, because every time the main characters meet the main characters, but I'm not gonna try to pronounce the actors' names. I'm not gonna do that to them. I'm not gonna butcher their names. I will say their characters' names, Amaret and Talika. Every time they look at each other, it's like this very romantic music starts playing. It's almost like a soap opera kind of. And then when the switch happens, when it turns into the violent action movie that it's promoted as, it's a very stark contrast. And when it happens, it's about to get very serious. I will say, even though this is my thing, this is the kind of movie, this is, as the kids say, this is my shit. I don't think the kids say that anymore. I think, my generation said that. Anyway, at certain points, you want the action to keep going. But that said, it also lets the characters, or the movie kind of stops a little bit, throughout here and there, but it lets the characters breathe, lets the characters be themselves, lets the viewer breathe a little bit as well. You have a chance to really hate the villain of this movie. He is a gigantic ass. He is a villain that you want to see definitely die at the end. There's literally zero redeeming qualities about this man. And I found out afterwards that the actor who plays him is actually known for his comedic roles. So that's pretty cool that he was able to nail a character like this, especially in a movie like this where it's like there's very little comedy to be had. The action is pretty good. It might not feel like it, and there were times where I was like, all right, that action's okay, but there are really great moments in here. But I think that's because it's a confined space. It takes place on a train. The whole movie is pretty much, there's the first 20 minutes of this movie are not on a train, and then the rest of the movie is on a train. And they're fighting in the middle of it where it's really small, and then the spaces by the bathroom, everything is confined. It is a confined space. And I always appreciate those fight scenes in confined spaces and small spaces, because I know how challenging it is to film just anything in a confined space, and I know how challenging it is to film a fight scene or to create and choreograph a fight scene in a small space like that. So that makes me appreciate this movie a little bit more for what it is. If you're an action martial arts movie fan nut like I am, I would recommend Kill. It takes a little bit to get the action going. It works a lot for the most part. There are some things where it's or whatever, but give it a chance, go watch it, especially because there is already a remake in the works for this movie. It is being done by the 8711 guys, which are the stunt team behind the John Wick movies. So if anything, we know the action's going to be good on that. But definitely give this one, I definitely recommend this one to all the action horror fans out there, or to all the action martial arts fans out there, because it's actually pretty good. All right, let's talk about MaXXine next. The third outing of the Ti West trilogy is finally here, and it was fine. It was fine. Mia Goth returns as MaXXine Minx. This is set years after the events of X, obviously, since Pearl itself is a sequel, or a prequel rather, to X, even though it came out after X. Here in MaXXine, the movie, MaXXine herself has finally made it to Hollywood, and after having a successful porn career, MaXXine has her sights set on Hollywood because she still wants to be famous. However, her past seems to have found her and is threatening to ruin everything she has been working for, and it couldn't happen at an even worse moment for her, because she's about to star in the highly anticipated horror sequel that's in the movie, with a big-time director played by Elizabeth Debicki. This has been a pretty decisive movie, much like Longlegs has been, which I've already talked about. A lot of people think this is a worthwhile, fitting sequel and ending to MaXXine's story, to Ti West's trilogy. Others not so much, saying this movie's tone didn't fit the movie and the story itself just wasn't that good. Personally, I find myself somewhere in the middle of that. We have to remember that this is a sequel, and while technically it is the third movie of the series, it is technically also the second movie of the trilogy, because Pearl was, again, a prequel to X, and MaXXine is very much a sequel to X. Pearl has zero impact on this movie other than Pearl and MaXXine. The characters both wanted to be stars, and both were played by Mia Goth. And I mention this because I think Ti West and Mia Goth having the idea to do Pearl and then releasing it after X hurt this movie, MaXXine, just a little bit. Because I have heard nonstop from people who have been talking about this movie, saying that they were waiting for Goth to have a Pearl moment. You were waiting for Goth to have this standout moment, like a long monologue that she has at the end of Pearl, like the audition scene she had in Pearl, like the scene in the cornfield with the scarecrow in Pearl. You were waiting for her to have that moment and that freak out. And the closest thing we get to Pearl really is the audition scene at the beginning of the movie. Other than that, Goth's performance is very much more reactionary to everything happening around her and everything to have to do with X. Because obviously those are two very different characters, but like that kind of thinking of like, oh, we wanted Mia Goth to have this big breakout scene and she doesn't have it because we all loved Pearl. It's like, that's not fair to this movie. You're judging her and her performance on a movie that was technically a prequel and also a different character. And we all know, and that's kind of what it felt like. That's what some of it felt like. Some of it felt like, yeah, Mia Goth just doesn't have that much to do in this movie, or not that much to do, but she just doesn't really have that big breakout performance in this movie like she has in the other movies. To that I will agree. Because besides that opening scene and her interacting with Kevin Bacon's character, who was very, very good in this movie, Kevin Bacon probably steals the movie a little bit. He plays a private eye hired to track down MaXXine. I don't want to say Goth isn't good here, but Goth is very much kind of held back a little bit. I feel like they held back a little bit on Goth, and they didn't want her to be kind of this kind of, she just, how do I say this? You know what? I guess I had to talk about a little bit. I think I had to spoil the movie here a little bit. So here's a spoiler warning for MaXXine. When it gets to the end, she just, everything about her, everything strong about her disappears. She becomes a damsel in distress almost. And it undoes everything that we saw MaXXine do in the first movie, and undoes everything that she kind of did here in this movie, where she, stomps the guy's junk off in the alley. Because obviously the villain of the movie really is her father. And we saw him in X, at the end of X. He's the preacher on the TV, and he's back under the red herring of the Night Stalker, which that whole part also had some people iffy as to why it was included, I guess. But it was during that time, the 80s, and it kind of set the mood of how dangerous LA was. And, again, just to be a red herring, even though I think none of us really bought that the Night Stalker, especially kind of like once stuff started getting revealed, like, that's not the Night Stalker. Like, there's no way. It has to be someone else. And then, we found out who it was, and it was a father, and it's just, I don't know. All that. I guess asks the question, did MaXXine have too much going on? And maybe it did have a little bit going on. I mentioned briefly that, MaXXine's father is the villain in the movie, and its third act really, this is where I was going to put my original spoiler territory, but that third act kind of falls apart. The way that MaXXine acts, like I mentioned, she acts like this completely helpless person until she gets untied. And her father, that whole thing with her father being like Hollywood and film and porn are all the devil's work. And he's been going around killing everyone that's, close to MaXXine or works with MaXXine, because, he's trying to save them. Also, he can get to her so he can save her too, but it almost looks like he wants to kill her too, because, but if she survives, she has been chosen and she has been saved. And he's doing it in the way he's kind of preaching about, like how Hollywood is evil and film is evil, but he's also filming it. So it's not the greatest plan, and that third act is just really messy, and it's just not good. It doesn't land the way you want it to. So it does fall apart. The movie, MaXXine, does fall apart in the third act, unfortunately. Everything else beforehand was pretty good. Some of the stuff, better than others, obviously. Like I mentioned, Kevin Bacon steals pretty much every scene he's in and pretty much kind of steals the movie. Giancarlo Esposito's in the movie as MaXXine's agent, Teddy. And I think it's kind of nice to see, Giancarlo Esposito play a character where he's not super serious all the time, where he kind of just, he can be, not the serious character. He can be a little silly, be a little goofy, but also kind of still have that sense of him. MaXXine has a friend. I forgot to put down his name, but she has a friend that owns like a video store that's like right below her apartment. Michelle Moynihan and Bobby Cannavale play cops who are investigating the murders, and also realize that maybe MaXXine has something to do with it or could be something involved with it. Cannavale plays it a little too thick. Like his whole character thing is like, he wanted to be an actor. So like he kind of like gives like this very like cliche tough cop performance. And it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, we get it. Like you wanted to be an actor? Okay. But like he just plays it on too thick. And Moynihan, I mean, she's fine. She's trying to like, connect with MaXXine in some sort of way, but just doesn't work. DeBecky is definitely kind of like the role model or someone that MaXXine inspires to be, because DeBecky, her character, she's making a horror movie to prove other people wrong, that horror can be more than just blood, sex, and guts. She wants to make an elevated horror movie. Obviously, an elevated horror movie in the 80s, very meta for today, because obviously, people are like, the elevated horror is the better horror, and that's a whole conversation and argument that we can have off pod. But the other great thing about the movie is the practical effects. The practical effects in the movie are really great. It's the entire series. If you want to, besides Goth's performances, probably with the exception here of MaXXine, the thing that really makes this whole series is the practical effects, and they work very much here as well. I think if you're a completionist, I would probably still recommend you watch MaXXine to people, because like you just need to finish the series off. Is it the best of the three? No, but it's not necessarily a bad movie. I think the final act really just falls apart. I think that's really the main thing for me. The final act in the movie is just not good. And yeah, I guess you can say like, if the movie doesn't land or doesn't stick its landing, it's just not a good movie overall. But I don't know if that's the case with here. But so if you're a completionist, go watch MaXXine. If you only saw X and you didn't see Pearl, you don't need to see Pearl. Just watch X and MaXXine. I would recommend Pearl. I would just say expect Pearl to be a very different movie. Okay, that was MaXXine. Let us move on and let's talk about Twisters. I am a fan of the original Twister. I don't care how much people hate it all of a sudden. I just feel like people were watching it and we were like, this movie's not good. It's like, no, I still like it. It's a good 90s movie. And I knew of the multiple attempts that they originally tried to do a sequel to that first movie, to that first Twisters movie. The late Bill Paxton was always up for it. At one point, he even brought in James Cameron to get involved. Yes, that James Cameron. And it just never, got off the ground. And then, of course, he sadly, passed away, and they kind of gave up on the idea of doing a Twisters sequel. And that was until 2020, when the other star of the movie, Helen Hunt, started pitching the idea around for a sequel. And it was her idea. I don't know if she wanted to direct the movie, but she definitely wanted to star in the movie and, get the idea rolling. And it was going to be her. She was going to come back, and she wanted to have a predominantly black cast, which was a very diverse cast, which is very interesting. And she had just been working on the TV series Blind Spotting, so she wanted to bring in Daveed Diggs, who was the producer and star of the movie Blind Spotting and of the TV series, to co-star in the movie with her. And that version of the sequel never really got off the ground. I think it was Universal behind it at the time, and they didn't want to do it. They kind of took the idea for a little bit, and then they kind of canceled it, and then they started working on developing this version that we got. And for a little bit, no one really knew if it was going to be a remake or a direct sequel. They weren't really saying if it was a remake or a sequel, because I think they were also kind of figuring out I think they were trying to get Helen Hunt to appear in the movie as well, but she just wasn't having it. So I think it ended up becoming its own thing. And so the answer to the question, yes, this movie is very much its own thing. It's got some great callbacks to the original movie. It's I wouldn't even call it a remake. It's not a remake. It's very much its own thing. It's not too in your face with those callbacks, but if you're a fan, you'll catch them. And Paxton's son, I forgot to put his first name in the movie, but his first name in general. But Paxton's son makes a cameo in this movie, which I think is really cool. Helen Hunt does not make a cameo, for all those wondering. More importantly, for the whole movie, twisters, as you can probably tell from a lot of people online, myself included. I think I've made multiple posts now about twisters on my Twitter page, is a hell of a lot of fun. It is so much fun. It is a summer blockbuster if there ever was one. It also feels like an old-fashioned movie, and for the better. Did I mention it was fun? Because it is. It's a hell of a lot of fun. And if anything, if you don't like the movie, at least you get to stare at Glenn Powell for 2 hours. Listen, I'm a straight man. I'm a straight man as they can ever be. And even I have to admit, Glenn Powell is a good-looking man. He is. I'll say it. He's a good-looking motherfucker. He is. And I'll get to more on Powell in a second. His character, not him in general. But because I want to start off with his co-star and our actual lead character in the movie, Kate, played by Daisy Edgar-Jones. And I saw a lot of people saying that she's not good here. I think she was doing her best that she could with what she was given. I think she was fine. She's very much character with a traumatic past, which opens up the movie. And she's struggling with that. She's also going back to where it all happened. And this is my first real experience with Daisy Edgar-Jones. I have not seen her in anything. I never got to see Fresh, which is the thing that I think when I kind of started hearing her name, I think she was in that When the Crawdad Sings, which no one really liked. I don't think anybody blames her. But and then she's appeared in some other stuff. But this is the first time I've actually seen her. And I liked her. I did. I thought she was fine. Glenn Powell, very opposite. He plays Taylor Owens, a self-professed tornado wrangler and a YouTuber at that. He also has a group just as wild as themselves. Eccentric, let's call him eccentric, a group. And Powell, he can't turn it off. He's charming. He's a charming man left and right. And he has his own story of why he's chasing around tornadoes. It's not, trauma-filled as much as Kate. But he has his reasons, and he's very much more than what he presents himself to be and what the movie kind of at first tries to present him as. And then we have Anthony Ramos, our other main character here, plays Javi, an old friend of Kate, who was also with her at the beginning of the movie. And he's the one that kind of brings her back in the game. So it's 5 years. So it's the beginning of the movie, and then it's 5 years later. Then Javi goes to her to try to get her to help because he wants to help people of Oklahoma, which is where the movie takes place and was actually filmed. Because he has a system, a more developed system, sophisticated way of detecting tornadoes and how to get information, how to stop them, and all this, that, and the other. And he wants Kate because obviously, she's from there. She's from Oklahoma. I think they try to say that Anthony Ramos' Javi was also from Oklahoma, but he's like, we got to go home. We got to help our people. And Kate has this, the Bill Paxton character gift where she can tell where a tornado will form. And Javi knows about this gift, and he tries to, be like, you got to help these people. Like, you're the only one I can do this with. I need your help. And Kate gives him a week to go. And that's how, the movie kicks off with them going to Oklahoma and meeting Tyler and, all this other stuff. And we meet we meet the cast very much early on. This movie, even though there's a good number of people, it's also a very small cast. And they all have their small moments. We don't get too much about them. I think that would probably be one of the kind of one missteps that I would say about this movie is that we don't get a lot of moments with all the characters. I get it. We're supposed to follow Kate and Tyler. Those are our main characters, but the supporting and Ramos' character as well. But it'd be nice to have, something more about the other characters. Probably the only one that we kind of connect to really is Brendan Parrow's character. He was a Nope. He plays Tyler's cameraman's Boone. He's the guy that yells, "We got twins." The rest of Tyler's crew is Sasha Lane, Tundi Alibimpi, I think that's how you pronounce it. I mispronounced your last name, sir, and I apologize. And Katie O'Brien from Love Lies Bleeding, she's also there. Journalist, we have a journalist character played by Harry Handon Payton, and he's doing a story on Tyler. And then obviously he meets Kate, and he's like, she's kind of interesting too. I want to do a story about her. But he's very much a journalist character. He's very much like the fiance to Bill Paxton's character from the first movie, where he's kind of tagging along, and he's kind of the guy that's like, well, what are we doing? Like, he's the guy that's like getting all the information from other people, and then for that to give us, the audience, the answers and questions as well. I will say I actually didn't know he was in the movie. Like, I didn't know he was in the movie until like the day it came out and that he was in there. David Cornsweet is in the movie. He's our new Superman. So we get to see our new Superman in the Twisters movie, and he's playing a character who we don't like. And you can tell immediately the characters you were supposed to like and the characters you are not supposed to like. We also have one last character I want to mention, Kate's mom, who's played by I'm gonna mispronounce her last name, or mispronounce her name. I'm sorry. And I know this actress. I've seen this actress. I like this actress, and I always mispronounce her name. Mara Tinery, maybe, who knows? But she comes in right before the final act in the movie, and it's hard not to imagine that. And nothing against Tinery. She does very good for, the small amount of time she has on camera. But it's very hard to imagine, like, this was probably the character that they wrote for Helen Hunt. And I think it was even rumored that Daisy Edgar-Jones was going to play Helen Hunt's daughter. So it's hard to imagine that, like, if, they had played well with Hunt, that this is probably where she would have been. She probably would have played the mom. But again, Tinery does very, very good here as well. Honestly, I don't know what else to say other than go watch Twisters. It's got some great horrifying moments. The tornado set pieces are all good. Like, there is not a single one where it's like, damn, this is boring. Like, no, they are all good. They are horrifying. You feel for our characters, especially, as the movie progresses, especially toward the end, that they're in danger. Like, these characters are seriously in danger, and they may not make it. I wish they'd done a little bit more with that, but but what they did with it was pretty good. It's also got a soundtrack that I like, and I know specifically this is the last thing I'd said about Twisters. There's a lot of country music in this movie. It's, filmed and set in Oklahoma. I'm not a big country music guy. I'm not. There's a few stuff out there that I like. I really like the soundtrack. I don't like all the songs in the soundtrack, but there's a good chunk of the soundtrack that I really like, and I've been listening to, and I've been enjoying it. The first movie has a very like upbeat kind of score that almost doesn't fit the movie, because it's about tornadoes. It's about you chasing tornadoes, and there's this very upbeat kind of music going on. But the soundtrack really works, I will say. Is the movie perfect? No. Like I mentioned, there's some issues with characters that we don't really get to know a lot about them. There's some slight pacing issues kind of before the final act. We kind of find out, like, there's a scene that happens really late in the movie between, Tyler and Kate, where they kind of just, explain everything, kind of like why Kate is like this. And like, yeah, we need that scene, and we probably do need it before the final act of the movie, but it's like, it happens so late where it's like, okay, like, we could have figured that out. Like, why did it take so long to get here? But whatever. So there's little slight pacing issues, whatever. There's a reveal in the movie. Again, I told you, like, there's characters that you're supposed to like and characters you're not supposed to like. And that reveal of why, it just kind of was like, yeah, we kind of got that. And it's like, did we really need that? I guess we kind of did, but, for the drama. But it's like, whatever. It's just surface level stuff, really. I will also address the controversy, quote unquote, of this movie, of the lack of a kissing scene. Because it's probably all over Twitter. You've probably seen it. They did shoot it, a kissing scene. You can probably tell who it's between. And it was cut because of Steven Spielberg, who was a producer on the movie. And I think they kind of said that he was the reason why they cut it. And listen, I am pro we didn't need a kiss. I am pro we didn't need a kiss. Was I expecting a kiss? Yes, I was very much expecting a kiss at the end. But seeing the movie, remember, like, just going through it, we didn't need it. Yes, there was a clear attraction, or at the very least, a strong connection between Kate and Tyler and what they shared, especially near the end. But I just don't feel like we need it. It wasn't a romance movie. It was a movie about storm chasers and Kate getting past her trauma and her fear. It wasn't about Kate and Tyler falling in love and getting that rom-com kiss at the end. Even though, yes, they feel for each other. And yeah, the original movie was also about storm chasing, and there was still a love storyline there, but that was very prominent at the beginning of the movie. This, Twisters, doesn't really play the romance kind of angle until the end, where it's like, do we really deserve it? Like, is it really earned? Like, is it really earned, or are y'all just horny for Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar-Jones? I get it. I do, but it's like, do we really need it? I don't think we needed it. That's just me. And it's not also, there was a tornado siren going off at the end. It's like, you want them to be like, hold on, guys. We'll go save you right now, but we got to have our kiss. Like, no, come on. They're not going to do that. They've already proven they're not those kind of people. So yeah, I'm just going to say, you're all just horny. Anyway, go watch Twisters. Go watch Twisters. It's fun. It's a summer blockbuster that everybody wants and everybody needs and everybody has wanted. It is a fun movie. Go watch it, please. All right. That is a July movie triple feature. I'll just call it triple feature. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll be releasing this before or after the Deadpool and Wolverine solo episode. So I'll just say, just check the feeds to see what's out there. And I will see you guys next time. Hopefully you all had a good July. Let me know what your favorite movie in July was. Was it any of these three? Was it Deadpool, Wolverine? Was it Longlegs? What was it? Let me know. And we can talk about it. All links down below in the I always do that, in the description/show notes area. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Be good people. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!